Conservatism. Conservatism, as the name suggests, tries to conserve traditional values. In Western culture, conservatives usually promote the nuclear family, organized religion, the military, and property rights. Liberalism. Liberalism is usually cited as the dominant ideology in modern history. It usually likes that every single individual has his own rights, that the government has to be approved by its own people, and that everyone should be treated the same way before the law. It also likes free markets, elections between multiple political parties, a separation of powers into different branches of the government, a separation of religion from the government, a set of fundamental values written in the Constitution, privacy rights, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, and freedom of religion. Moderatism. Moderatism likes to stay within what is called the Overton window, which is the range of policies politically acceptable to the mainstream population. In most cases, moderates are apolitical, which means that they don't care, but they have a little bit of knowledge about politics. Capitalism. Capitalism is an economic system based on the private ownership of the means of production and their operation for profit. The central characteristics of capitalism are private property, free exchange, competition, division of labor, and social cooperation. Socialism. There are many types of socialism, making this an umbrella term. In the classical sense, socialism describes worker-owned means of production, heavily supporting worker coups, democratic self-management, and workplace democracy. Socialism in the modern age advocates workers' democratic self-management, high taxation on the wealthy, and nationalization of key parts of industry. One of its key values is social ownership. Syndicalism. Syndicalism is the son of socialism, and it believes that unionization of the workforce, the establishment of local, decentralized revolutionary worker organizations called syndicates, and advancement of workers' demands through the use of strikes and direct action are the best methods by which a socialist society should be achieved. Once a post-capitalist society is achieved, a congress or commune of syndicates would be created to represent the many unions or areas of the economy for a central government. Corporatism. Corporatism advocates the organization of society in different areas of employment, like agriculture, military, engineering, etc., which people get assigned to based on their interests and skills. It believes in a cross-class system of regulation, in which the workers, employers, and state negotiate with one another in order to most efficiently run the economy and satisfy, in theory, all parties involved. It does not refer to a political system dominated by large business interests. That would be a corporatocracy. Libertarianism. Libertarianism upholds liberty as a core value, and it seeks to maximize autonomy and political freedom. It likes a very limited government. It believes in the same principles of liberalism, such as equality before the law and the basic rights to life, liberty, and property. Separatism. Separatism, also commonly known as secessionism, seeks to establish a nation, country, sovereign state, or government that is separate from an already existing nation. Communism. Communism is centered around common ownership of the means of production, distribution, and exchange that allocates products to everyone in society based on need. A communist society doesn't have private property, social classes, money, or the state. Feminism. Feminism aims to define and establish the political, economic, personal, and social equality of the sexes. It holds the position that societies prioritize the male point of view and that women are treated unjustly in these societies. Efforts to change this include fighting against gender stereotypes and improving educational and professional opportunities for women. Anarchism. Anarchism is an ideology that advocates for a society without rulers or constituted authority, with a focus on the notion of freedom. It advocates for the replacement of the state with stateless societies and voluntary free associations. Environmentalism. Environmentalism, sometimes called green politics, is a term used to represent a range of ideologies that fall under the belief that nature should be a significant factor in deciding public policy, be it increasing recycling, decreasing CO2 emissions, stopping water pollution, etc. Populism. It focuses on appealing to a large number of people and their sensibilities, believing that what the masses want must be what the masses get. It can take on many forms, as its only requirement is that it represents a movement by the people for the people. This causes it to have no real political affiliation. It's often associated with democracies due to its reliance on popular support. It often divides the people from the elite, and it's frequently anti-establishment and anti-politics. Republicanism. Republicanism is an ideology centered around a system of government that is non-hereditary and, in opposition to monarchism, gives political power to its citizens in a state organized as a republic. Progressivism. Progressivism says that heritage that stems from the past is not to be held sacred and should instead be viewed as less important than societal progress. It's basically the opposite of conservatism. Imperialism. Imperialism has traditionally believed a country should expand its power or influence through military action. It was once very popular, and it was basically considerable as moderatism, but it has decreased in popularity over the years. Imperialism is noted for its war advocacy and belief that the powerful nations should rule over the weaker ones. It usually defends himself against accusations of oppression by insisting that colonized people benefit because the richer nations help them and give them things they couldn't get normally. Egalitarianism. Egalitarianism is a school of thought that builds on the concept of social equality, prioritizing it for all people. As such, all citizens of a state should be accorded equal rights and treatment under the law. Transhumanism. Transhumanism believes that everyone should upgrade themselves with technology to overcome both the most basic and most complex of humanity's challenges. The ultimate objective is for all people to reach immortality and an incredibly advanced mind and body. Communitarianism. Communitarianism is an ideology that emphasizes the well-being of and the importance of the community as the primary social unit. It will typically stress the idea that the left-right binary of politics is holding politics back, as well as argue that policies from both sides of the spectrum are complementary and necessary to benefit the community. It believes that absolute individualism is harmful when it contradicts the common good. Authoritarianism. Authoritarianism is a form of government characterized by a strong power, which is usually central, that demands obedience to authority and limited political and civil freedoms. For example, most classic monarchies are a form of authoritarianism. The ruler of an authoritarian country imprisons and persecutes its opponents. Fascism. Fascism says that people are weak divided, but strong united under the banner, whether that banner be of a state, nation, army, or anything of the like. It is authoritarian, which means that it's characterized by a controlling government that rejects the idea that people can vote between multiple parties. It involves a strong central power, which usually refers to a dictator, so it rejects separation of power. Fascism is also ultranationalist, which is the belief that a nation shouldn't care about other nations' rights as long as it benefits itself. Ultranationalism usually coexists with militarism, which is the idea that a nation should have a powerful enough military to expand national interests and values. Fascism suppresses opposition using forceful methods. It believes in a natural social hierarchy, and it promotes the refusal of individual interests for the perceived good of the nation or race. Nazism. Nazism is a form of fascism with a focus on its racist ideology, which says that the Aryan race is superior. It believes that the Aryan race should rule the rest of the world to make it better, thus being ultranationalist. To be classified as an Aryan by the Nazis, you have to be white, straight, mentally and physically able, non-cowardice, and non-Jewish. If you are considered non-Aryan, you are called Untermensch, which means subhuman. It also likes eugenics, a set of beliefs and practices that aim to improve the genetic quality of a human population. For that reason, people with inherited disorders are considered useless eaters and were killed or sent to camps on sight as they were regarded as life unworthy of life. Nazism also hates homosexuals, considering them Untermensch as well. I'll be making similar videos. Subscribe to see them. Anarcho-communism. Anarcho-communism combines characteristics of anarchy and communism, advocating for the abolition of private property but the retention of personal property and collectively owned items, goods, and services. Personal property includes items intended for personal use, such as a toothbrush, a house, clothes, and a vehicle. The owner has the right to exclude others from personal items. Private property, on the other hand, usually refers to something that generates value for its owner, like a factory or a mine. Private property usually generates capital without the owner necessarily having to perform any physical labor. Anarcho-communism believes in the abolition of the state and all structures of capital, leading to a stateless, classless, and post-monetary society where the population is given full control over policymaking. Neoliberalism. Neoliberalism has multiple competing definitions. It's generally associated with policies like privatization, deregulation, globalization, free trade, and reductions in government spending in order to increase the role of the private sector in the economy and society. It's sometimes also associated, on the libertarian left side, with managerial capitalism, which advocates for the dilution of ownership within society to a point where owners can no longer exert power over businesses, and rather this power being moved towards a professional manager class. Today, the term neoliberalism is usually thought to have a highly negative connotation. Social democracy. Social democracy advocates for economic and social interventions to promote social justice within a capitalist-oriented mixed economy with both private and public businesses. It likes strong welfare programs, regulation of the economy in the general interest, and prefers reforms rather than revolutions. It likes the liberal democratic framework with separation of religions from the government, elections between different political parties, etc. Social democracy usually achieves the execution of welfare programs through progressive taxation. Social liberalism. While social democracy says that poor people should be helped through a strong welfare state, social liberalism focuses on making social mobility easier and on providing more equality of opportunities rather than equality in all domains. It likes a little bit of intervention from the government into the economy in the name of ensuring economic justice as well as civil liberty. Social capitalism. Social capitalism is a combination of social democracy, social liberalism, and capitalism. Third way. The third way tries to reconcile right-wing and left-wing politics, combining stances from social democracy and social liberalism. It supports workfare, which is a governmental plan under which people are required to accept public service jobs or to participate in job training to obtain the benefits. It also seeks a compromise between a purely free economic system as supported by classical liberals and a welfare state as supported by social liberals. One of the third way's key goals is to create a social investment state, which helps people climb the social ladder through workforce development and education, rather than handouts. Marxism. Marxism has developed over time into various branches and schools of thought, so no single, definitive Marxist theory exists. Classical Marxism seeks to create a communist society. It makes a distinction between the minority who owns the means of production, called the bourgeoisie, and the vast majority of the population who produce goods and services, called the proletariat. It says that capitalism exploits and oppresses the proletariat, making it an economically unsustainable model, as it causes proletarian revolutions. Marxism also believes that history can be viewed in stages of development based on which class holds a dictatorship over the other classes, and that today, the world is under the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. Following the overthrow of the bourgeoisie, Marxism believes that a dictatorship of the proletariat must be established to eradicate capitalism and begin the transition to communism. This stage, where the working class has absolute power over all other classes and has ownership of the means of production, is usually called socialism. Leninism. Leninism, also known as Bolshevism, believes in the establishment of a dictatorship of the proletariat led by a revolutionary vanguard party. The Revolution Vanguard Party should be composed of the most educated workers, with the objective of educating larger sections of the working class and starting the revolution. Neo-libertarianism. Neo-libertarianism thinks that the libertarians' value of freedom from interference by other people is incompatible with a strictly limited government, and thus, it is generally supportive of government involvement in society as long as it promotes greater liberty. It is sometimes associated with neoconservatism, which is the idea that typically advocates the promotion of democracy and interventionism in international affairs, including peace through strength. Classical liberalism. Classical liberalism thinks that individual freedom and a free market create a balanced economic equilibrium, as long as monopolies aren't allowed to develop and destroy competitiveness. It sees free trade as a path to universal peace and prosperity, and it likes as little government intervention as possible. If compared to social liberalism, it thinks more negatively about social policies and taxation, and it advocates deregulation. Anarcho-capitalism. Anarcho-capitalism is anarchist because it doesn't like a centralized state, and it's capitalist because it likes systems of private property enforced by private agencies, free markets, and self-ownership. As no centralized state would exist, there would be no taxation, and private companies would take the role of the police. Nationalism. Nationalism holds the belief that the nation should be congruent with the state. A nation is a large type of social organization where a collective identity has emerged from a combination of shared features across a given population, such as language, history, ethnicity, etc. A state is a centralized political organization that imposes and enforces rules over a population within a territory. One of nationalism's key goals is to maintain its sovereignty over its homeland, usually through a nation-state. It holds that each nation should govern itself, free from outside interference. When a nation puts its own interest above all others at any cost, it's called ultranationalism. The opposite of ultranationalism is universal nationalism. Georgism. Georgism, also known as the single tax movement, thinks that, although people should own the value that they produce themselves, the value derived from land should belong equally to all members of society. It believes that there should only be one tax, the land value tax, because it views property rights as only extending to the properties of labor and capital, and since land is neither, it's free real estate. Radicalism. Radicalism, or radical liberalism, was a historical set of movements within classical liberalism and represented the left wing of the historical movement. Radical liberalism took the principles behind liberalism and applied them to its conclusion. For example, a classical liberal might espouse that a democratic system of government and the right to vote should be given. In turn, a radical liberal would take such a statement to its conclusion, that being that women, those without property, immigrants, slaves, etc., should all be given the right to vote. Corporatocracy. Corporatocracy is an economic system in which the state intervenes within the economy for the benefit of a select number of corporations, especially in the context of squashing competition. A variant of corporatocracy is lemon socialism, which is a pejorative term for an economic system based on a government that offers subsidies to weak, bad, or bankrupt companies so that they remain in the market. Cyberocracy. Cyberocracy represents the advocacy of a government that is largely automated or partially automated and de facto ruled by computers and artificial intelligence. Integralism. Integralism is the principle that the church should be the basis of public law and public policy within civil society. It's usually a deeply traditionalist doctrine, and it doesn't like secularism. Reactionarism. Reactionarism is a philosophy that advocates for the restoration or preservation of traditional social, political, and economic systems. It is characterized by a rejection of progressive or liberal ideas and a belief that society has become too modern or innovative. Jacobinism. It's the philosophy of a complete dismantling of an old system with a completely radical and new structure. It's historically seen as one of the most revolutionary and important movements throughout modern history, as it played a huge role in the French Revolution, where monarchy was abolished and replaced by a republic. I'll be making a part 3. Subscribe and activate the bell to see it.